Good afternoon, Minnesota MUFON members, honored guests, viewers watching us live from around the world. My name is Tom Maher. I am the State Director of Minnesota MUFON. On behalf of Paola Harris, the Minnesota MUFON Board of Directors, our Assistant State Director Craig Lang, our Chief Investigator Bill McNeff, and our field investigators, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you to our presentation today, coming to you live from New Brighton, Minnesota. I would also like to thank Gary Long and Adrian D'Amico of the YouTube channel Suspect Sky for agreeing to simultaneously broadcast this presentation to all of their subscribers. If you are watching this on Suspect Sky right now, once the presentation is over, head on over to the Minnesota MUFON YouTube channel and check out our videos. And keep coming back because we've got a lot more videos that we're going to be adding soon. And if you're watching us on the Minnesota MUFON YouTube channel, when this presentation is over, please make sure you go over to the Suspect Sky YouTube channel and check out what Gary and Adrian have going on over there. And now that the shameless plugs are done, it's time for the fun to start. It was the great baseball philosopher Yogi Berra who said, "It feels like deja vu all over again." And I must admit, there's a little bit of that feeling in the air today. It was a little bit less than a year ago that I stood before you and introduced Minnesota MUFON to Paola Harris for the first time. In case you missed that introduction, let me tell you a little bit about her. Paola Harris is an Italian-American photojournalist and investigative reporter in the field of extraterrestrial-related phenomena research. She is also a widely published author, freelance writer, particularly in Europe. She has studied extraterrestrial-related phenomena since 1979 and is on personal terms with many of the leading researchers in the field. From 1980 to 1986, she assisted Dr. J. Allen Hynek with his UFO investigations and has interviewed many of the top military witnesses concerning their involvement in the government truth embargo. She has a master's degree in education. She teaches history and photojournalism and online classes in exopolitics for Dr. Michael Salas's Exopolitics Institute, for which she is International Liaison Director. Now, you may be thinking, I've heard of J. Allen Hynek. I've heard of Dr. Stanton Friedman. I know about Giorgio Tsoukalos. But I've never heard of this Paola Harris. And I understand that. Paola is a journalist. She's a true investigator. She has not spent her time seeking the limelight or working on her celebrity status. She did not spend her career up in her ivory tower, and she did not do her research by scouring books to find facts that someone else has already uncovered. So where has she been? Like any true investigator or journalist, she was out in the field, out in the trenches. Second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand accounts, just not good enough for her. She spent her career seeking out and talking to the actual eyewitnesses, first-hand accounts from people who were actually there, on scene, when it was happening. She spent her career getting as close as you can possibly get to this phenomenon without actually experiencing it firsthand. That was the only thing good enough for Paola Harris. This year marks the 70-year anniversary of the Roswell incident. It also marks the 20-year anniversary of Philip Corso giving to Paola Harris the information she will be sharing with us today. Yes, she has kept this information under wraps for 20 years. You are the very first to hear her speak on this. Talking to her yesterday, the word she used was historic. I can't argue with that. When I introduced her to you last year, I told you to buckle up and hold on tight because the ride was about to begin. If you did not heed my warning then, let me repeat it to you. Buckle up and hold on tight, because this ride is about to begin again. Please help me welcome Paola Harris.
That was amazing. Thank you. That was amazing.
Just for you. So.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Minnesota MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. And for you people that don't know what MUFON does, it's the data collecting agency that puts this together. We can't do this work without somebody collecting the data. And so I am very grateful to MUFON and very close to Jan Harzan, who is the director of MUFON, because this needs to keep going. And it's a serious organization. It's an organization, it's the only show in town. And we have to support this organization. So I did my little commercial for MUFON, and I thank all the people involved in bringing me here a second time. It is historic. This is going to be emotional for me because I have worked with so many what people call whistleblowers. Whistleblowers means people who worked in military and intelligence community that decide to come out and tell the truth. In the beginning, when I was working with Hynek, I did not even talk about ETs, aliens, what was inside the craft. I was working with scientists. Hynek, as you know, was an astronomer. He was the consultant on Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And when I tell you the story of my life with Colonel Corso, you'll realize that everything was synchronistic. It was all a coincidence. In other words, somebody has been guiding my research. I end up at the right place at the right time with the right people. This is not science fiction. Everything you will learn today is real. Some people can digest it and go, oh my God, I want to know more, and they will read about it. Some people, like my daughter, that just called me and said, Mom, have a good time. I don't know what you're doing. But you know, they don't want to go to those places. They don't want to talk about UFOs. And may I encourage you, if they don't want to talk about it, don't do violence to them and force it on them, because it's not religion. It is a study. And because I'm a teacher, I'm going to say it's an academic study. It should be in the universities. It should be in high-level places. So I'd like to begin by telling you that what I am telling you today is historic because I've waited 20 years from the first time I met Colonel Philip Corso, and I'll tell you about his background in a minute, to tell about my life with him, because Colonel Corso did not speak very much in the United States. He is the co-author with Bill Burns. He is actually the author of The Day After Roswell. Bill Burns was his co-author. And The Day After Roswell was the best-selling book in the 1997 50th anniversary of Roswell. And I'll talk about how I met him there. What I'd like to do, and this is for legal purposes and for credibility purposes, if it's okay with Bob, what I like to do is to put, and I was doing this on purpose, I had a tape recorder, I taped everything he said, what Colonel Corso wanted me to do. So if we could play the mandate, I was with my co-host, with my co-researcher, Adriano Forgione. So he's gonna say, to Paola and Adriano. So go ahead, Bob, play the clip.
I'm 83 years old. So I have to get you younger ones to carry the story.
Name them.
Yeah, Paola and Adriano. And I want you to do it. Like today, Mauricio did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
A couple times, he continued what I said, and that's what I wanted to do. Pick it up and continue what I say. And I want in shows, TVs, or movies, or whatever, I say something. When you say something, I want you to pick it up and explain it. Just like you did today on the TV, you explained the part about the extraterrestrials.
Yes,
I didn't do it.
The Rai Uno. The Rai Uno, I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did it. You did all right.
Yeah, because I've heard it so many times that I can do
Yeah.
it.
Well, that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then little by little, I'll tell you more and more and more, and you put more on.
Okay. Yeah. Which thing did you give him?
He got the part on the on the craft.
And you gave me
the extraterrestrial.
the body.
The body.
Yeah, but I don't know anything about the body. How can I explain?
You'll
it?
learn.
What do you mean I'll learn?
You'll learn. That's it.
I have to memorize those 18 pages?
You're translating. You know what that word means, don't you? You learn.
I know, but 18 pages? 18 pages of body?
You might learn 180 pages before you're through.
180 pages?
I miss him. He was the real thing. And when I spent that time with him, he was very well aware, Colonel, and I'm doing the best I can, that he would not be around. He said he was 83 years old, and he wanted us to go ahead and talk about this. What he gave me was an analysis of the extraterrestrial body, because Colonel Corso not only worked at the Pentagon during the Kennedy administration in research and development, he also saw craft at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and he saw the bodies and the autopsies. So what he gave me, and it's in my book, is an analysis of the body, and I can talk a little bit about it as I go on. So it's historic, because if Colonel Corso did not speak in the United States because there was a lawsuit against the book, that can keep anybody shut up. That's one way of doing it. What happened is that I brought him to Italy on 2 separate occasions. I spent Easter with him, and he told me a lot. So the book is Conversations with Colonel Corso. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, because I'm very well known in Europe, but I don't, I'm always working and traveling, so I don't do a lot here. I will be on Coast to Coast with George Nuri on the 13th. I mean, I know him very well, and he knows the work I do. So every time I do a story, I don't go on George just because it's me or I want publicity. I have to have a story. So he's having me on about Colonel Corso on the 13th of this next week. So I will be on talking about this. This is Colonel Corso and me. When I said Rai Uno, that's the Italian television. It's the Radio Televisione Italiana. And Rai Uno, actually Rai Uno covered it. All the major networks in Europe covered it. I don't know if you're aware, but the real truth comes out in Europe. There's no little, when we do conferences over there, there's no gadgets or vendors or whatever. We do a serious conference with professors, doctors, people that are professional to come there, and we do not do the entertainment value that they do here. I consider, unfortunately, American ufology as entertainment. It's what people want to hear. It scares the living daylights out of people. It doesn't usually cover factual information. And because I'm a teacher and have a master's in education, I got to get facts. I don't have an opinion. I'm going to only give you the facts. In 30 years of research, since I started working with the best of the best of the best, who's Alan Hynek, and I think, by the way, I'm wearing the same jacket, even though I've gained 20 pounds, that I wore with Colonel Corso in the photos. And for you people that want to see it, he, as a homage to me, gave me his necktie, which is right here. See this? And he gave me his briefcase that he used to carry around his secret papers. So I have his briefcase and his necktie as homage to the work I did. And it's really hard being a woman in this field and doing this work, because I don't know if you notice, it's heavily male dominated. And the problem is that sometimes we're not taken seriously, but there are things that women have a way of having a 360-degree vision of the field, an overall vision, rather than staying on one particular aspect of it. And what we want to do is put together the pieces of the puzzle, don't you? I mean, do you just want to learn one thing? You want to learn You want to learn Bigfoot, you want to learn crop circles, you want to learn contact, you want to learn military involvement, you want to learn it all. You just don't want to learn one little piece of the field. George Nuri always asks me, and he's a good friend, I dedicated my second book to him, All of the Above, which is there. He says, Paula, he said, well, what drives you? And I said, I just want to know. That's the only there's no money in this, so don't even go there. I have mortgaged my house. I have done everything, all my research of my own money. So the thing is this, that I want to know. That's what drives me. And then he says, is the thing interplanetary, interdimensional, or paranormal? And my answer to George is the title of the book, All of the Above. It's all of it. It's all of it. So when I tell you about Corso today, he was a very unusual man who had some very weird experiences. And I'm going to tell you about that because he told me about them. So I tried to make the ufology, which is entertainment on this end, and sometimes, becomes a club where everybody hangs out in the vendor room and buys stuff. I tried to make it an academic subject. And so I worked with Dr. Michael Salo, a professor, when he established exopolitics. Exopolitics, for me, is a formal academic study of the extraterrestrial presence and the political, as well as the sociological implications for this planet. So in a funny kind of way, I want to say to my kids, it does relate to you, because if this is real, what we're looking at is the political and sociological implications to planet Earth from visitations from other places. And in my work in Rome, and I was in Italy from 1994 to 2007 teaching at the American Overseas School of Rome. My work in Rome also entailed dealing with Monsignor Balducci of the Vatican. So I have that background. We had long conversations, Balducci and I. He was Vatican nuncio in Washington, D.C., and the Vatican believes they're people. They are people. So in 2009, the Vatican says, they are our brothers and sisters. And this is Father Nunez, who is the Vatican nuncio. He says they are people, they are brothers and sisters. So what I have to do is give you pieces of all of it. My background is really extensive. I can talk about any of these things, crash retrieval. I published Clifford Stone's crash retrieval book that you see back there, because a lot of this stuff that sounds like science fiction is real, and the people that did it are still alive. And so my job is to get to them before they die and to do the work, and by the way, I go around with the tape recorder because I can't remember what they told me. And so if you noticed, even in that clip, I made Colonel Corso name the people he was leaving the legacy to, and he said Paola and Adria. I said name them, because I knew later on that I had to keep all the audio tape. The question with all the controversy is around the book. So people that do know about the day after Roswell, that say that the book has been debunked, and skeptics, and I'm not going to name the name of a famous UFO researcher who's gone after Corso because of the day after Roswell, remember that it was written by Bill Burns. The real Corso notes, and you'll see some handwriting in the real Corso notes, are called The Dawn of a New Age. They are on Open Minds TV channel. Open Minds TV, Open Minds does the Phoenix conference, the International UFO Conference. They actually contracted to put Corso's original notes, and I've got it in my book, on their website. What Bill Burns wrote was very interesting. The title is interesting because Corso was never at Roswell. And there is some disinformation in there. Because I've learned this from the Charles Hall case, which I did, from the Michael Wolff case, which I did, a lot of cases which I've done. When you write the truth, you've got to put something in there that will cause controversy, and that's called plausible deniability, so that you don't tell the whole truth and people can go after the book. or go after your words, because it's very difficult. It is a way for them to say, in the case of Charles Hall, he said it was science fiction in the beginning. I know it wasn't, because we did the whole story. The thing is this, that you need to find the truth. And what I'll tell you is what he told me, which may not be in the book, but he isn't making it up. One of the tests for people telling the truth is, why did you write the book, Colonel Corso? Why did you write it? And he said, I have 3 grandchildren, 3 boys. In fact, part of the deal bringing Corso to Europe was to bring the boys, because Colonel Corso's roots are Sicilian. He's from Sicily. And he said, I want my grandsons to experience Italy. So part of the deal, my boss, Maurizio, had to bring the grandchildren. He had to bring Philip, Andrew, and Nick, the boys, with their mother to Italy with Colonel Corso. I dedicated my book to the 3 Corso grandchildren. If a man is saying that he is telling the truth because his grandson asked him if he ever met E.T., the man is not lying. Will you please get that? Because I know this is the first time I've ever spoken about Colonel Corso in the United States. The controversy will be interesting. He did not make millions of dollars. He died after 1 year, and he did the best he could to tell the truth about what he was involved in, what he personally was involved in. So, Ken, the Dawn of a New Age, I told you where that is. If you want to see his notes, Open Mind TV. Okay, so my website, I have a lot of stories, and since the days of Alan Hynek, I have gone down to South America to do some research on contact. I will not use the word abduction. Contact. You know, you're laughing. Look, for me, a human abduction is they don't put you back in your bed. They kill you, they slit your wrist, your throat, and they throw you in the dumpster. That's a human abduction. I like the word contact in every way possible because I knew John Mack personally, and I really think that he believed that we should change our worldview to accommodate the fact that ETs are contacting us. But why I went to South America is they're human ETs, and they're coming off the ships and speaking to people. So I have to be there. So I've been to Bogota, Colombia. I've been to Chile, in Atacama Desert in Chile. I've been to Argentina to try to do this work, all on my own dime. But anyway, so I've gone from, so that's on my website. I can't talk about that today because I'm only talking about Corso. So where does all my research go? Because there's no magazine in the States. There's no place. If I do research, where am I going to put it so you can see it? I've got a YouTube channel too, but I'm so grateful to the people that are listening on live stream, because this is the future. This is the way it's got to go. Because if I'm going to talk about this once and it's historic, it's got to go out there. So in America, there's no place to put it. In Italy, I write for a magazine called X Times. So everything I do, I will do for Italy. There's my staff. You see me down there and kneeling down. Well, this is Rome. There's Maurizio. This was my boss, Maurizio, in the old days. Now it's Adriano. He's the one that Colonel Corso gave everything else to. And these are the people that do X Times magazine. Now, I don't know if I put, okay, I have to debut my Italian book on the 11th of June in Rome. So I will be flying to Italy, where they do respect Colonel Corso, where they are waiting for the news, where Maurizio, my boss, will also talk about being involved with Colonel Corso and what Corso told him. Corso told him so much, especially about, he covered the Foo Fighters during World War II. He covered his involvement in Rome in the intelligence community. He covered so much ground for us in Europe that was very, very important. Here's 2 of my books, but I've written 5. This book that's back there covers the South American contacts, and there's drawings of the contacts in South America. Now, since I have this like academic, idea of how to do what I want to do for a conference. I used to be on the board of directors of the old Laughlin Conference with Bob Brown, and we were an international group. We had Haktan Octagon from Turkey, where's he, right here, and we had AJ Gevard from Brazil, and we had people from all over the world, because we believed that ufology was international. And today, we have the same people, and nobody's international. I'm wondering, it costs a lot of money, and not only that, in the case of Sisto Paz Wells for Peru, I got to get an interpreter. So I invented this conference under Starworks USA, my company. I said, okay, what we're going to do is since my mind is, and I know all these people, I knew Sisto Paz because that's where the contactee started in Peru. Enrique Villanueva speaks English, and he and Sisto have seen human type, physical beings. I'm going to have 9 women, and I don't know if you know Regina Meredith from Gaiam Television. She's a very close friend of mine. And I hope you have Don Schmidt here. He worked with me with Hynek. He was CUFOS, Center for UFO Studies, in 1980, and he does just Roswell. He's an excellent Roswell researcher. So this is what I did. If you count them, there are 9 men and 9 women, because I'm trying to balance the field. Not only that, I don't want cartoony stuff, so you won't see any little grays in any part of the thing, even though we will talk about that a little bit. And I would like to have it be the evolution of human consciousness. So it's not New Age, it's just that the reason why we want to do this, and Shirley MacLaine put it, she's a very great fan of this kind of thinking, okay? So she said, a greater understanding of each other and opening minds to, in other words, to learning, to open your mind to why this is happening. This is a phenomenon. It's not science fiction. It's real. So I'm trying to make it be something a little different. And this year, George Nuri is going to question Clifford Stone, crash retrieval on stage. I'm putting the both of them there. I already questioned Clifford Stone over and over again about the 12 crashes that he was involved with, 3 of them in Vietnam, and the live and dead aliens that he saw. And some of the species cannot be put into the box of Nordic, reptilian, and gray, which is the most ignorant thing I've ever heard of in my life. I hope the beings don't come here and put us into 3 boxes on this planet. Because you can't do that. You cannot. Colonel Corso told me that there was 52 different species of alien or being or extraterrestrials categorized at the Pentagon. And Clifford Stone tells me there's 57. Cliff says there's 57. So what in the world are we shoving them into 3 boxes for? I mean, what would you call the little being at the Virginia case in Brazil, if you know the case in Virginia, Brazil? He was a little red being that got lost, and they captured him. He doesn't belong in any of those boxes. The question is not who is visiting, or if they're bad or good, which to me is religious connotation. It's why are they here? It's the agenda. Why are they here? Because they are here. You know, just put yourself in their place. They're visiting. They go back to their planet and they'll say, are humans bad or good?
Yes.
Look at what we're doing. We're raping the planet. We're warring. We're going against, I mean, what if they go back and say, well, you know, they're bad. You can't do that. You cannot make it that simple. May I encourage you to rethink your thinking on this? Because that's the first question they ask me. Are they good or bad? And I always say, are you good or bad? It's not about examining people like that. Okay, so there is very young, very thinner Paola Harris with Alan Hynek. This is, I don't know if you recognize him, but he was in Close Encounters. There was a picture of him in Close Encounters earlier. I don't know if you saw this, the cameo he did. Yeah, and so I learned a lot from him, and what he said, he dedicated this to me, he said, laugh, laugh, study, study. So I got to inject humor in this somehow. This is what Colonel Corso said. To Paula, a new world will dawn for you, and you will be in the forefront. Filippo, he always did his Italian thing because he was Italian. Here I am at the Washington Press Club. You know, I love this picture, and the reason why I love it is because this is Gilles Dabourdet, a good friend from France. He's a French researcher. He does great work. This is Jaime Maussan from Mexico City. This is Antonio Huneas from Chile. This is Alfred Weber, Vancouver. This is Richard Dolan. This is Nick Pope. This is Dr. Michael Sala. And back here is Robert Salas, who was present during the Maelstrom Air Force Base missile shutdown. That isn't science fiction. The UFOs shut down nuclear missiles in 1969, twice at Maelstrom. So when people ask you, is this real, just say, look that up. And he's come forward, and he was there. And he told me, you know, I'm going to talk a little bit about the paranormal. And I talked to Robert Salas over, I've interviewed him, I think he's on my YouTube channel. And I said, well, when it happened, when the UFO, you were down in the bunkers, and everybody was afraid, all of soldiers kept saying, you know, there's these big orbs up here, and the missiles went down, all 10 of them. I said, did you feel anything? He said, yeah, in my head, I heard a voice say, we will shut you down. I said, Robert, that's amazing, you know, we will shut you down. They're able to stop a nuclear situation? You think I'm not listening? Can they do that again if we're in danger? In Russia, they activated the codes to send the missiles towards us. And they stopped the activation just as those missiles were coming towards. Do you think that's a lesson? Do you think we learned it? Now, you're hearing me talking and going, this is amazing. I'm a teacher. I'm going to accumulate this information that's real. I'm going to put it together. I have to. It's my responsibility. I have 300 books in my house. I've read all of them. They're my colleagues' research. I don't understand why my colleagues don't read each other's research. You cannot go around and do your own book and think that's UFO research. You have to read everything. You have to meet all the research people, and that's one of the faults of our field, because our field doesn't have any money in it. So it's just about, you know, everybody being important and so forth. But as an educator, what I'd like to have happen is that all the Roswell people get together, all the crop circle people get together, all the contact people get together, we all sit at a table and we try to figure this out. It isn't happening. You can't get a degree in anthropology reading one book. So I am hoping, may I encourage the world to please read, please look at the real stuff, get off internet because that's entertainment, and go to the source. Read Jacques Vallée, read Adamski, read the original sources so you know what's going on. And I want to encourage my colleagues, whom I love, all of them, they work so hard, to please come together and try to figure this out, because it's getting too late here. We've been at this for a long time. So, colleagues from all over the world, this was a Washington Press Club with Stephen Bassett, who is a hero for me, because Stephen wants it out through the President of the United States. That ain't going to happen, I don't think. I don't know what president is going to go before the people and say, guess what, we've been lying to you all these years because we have these crash saucers and we are not throwing them in the trash. We are replicating the free energy and we can't give it to you because we live in a world of an oil economy. We live in a world where we're still putting pipelines under Indian land up in Standing Rock. When we have free energy. There are more jobs now in alternative energy than there is in coal. Look where we are here. So, you know, here we're trying in our, so what did I do there? I just said to the media, I said, look, you know, you guys are hiding this, you newspaper people. I'm a journalist. I'm not I'm a journalist. I report the story. Why don't you guys report the real story? It's your job. This is a real UFO. It's in Italy in a place called Vercelli. I did a story up there. He has movies and he has photographs. His name is Maurizio Cavallo. I was there. And it was very interesting because he said, I have a whole bunch of pictures. And he gave me some Polaroids of beings that he had taken aboard ship. That is a whole other story. This is a book. The only way that I could do this book and not have the whole community come after me is just say, these are my conversations with Colonel Corso. This is what he told me. Guess what? Here's the audio tape, which you just heard at the beginning, but there's more audio tape. I used to keep it in my pocket. He's like, when I used to talk to Corso, I had the tape recorder going because I said, I'll never remember this, and I don't want to get anything wrong. So all of my interviews, even in those books, are based on audio tape because I don't want them calling me up and say, I never said that. And I say, well, here's the audio tape you did. Here it is, because I copy it straight off the tape. I have no opinion about what you're saying. You're saying what you're saying, and I'm not, spinning it. Okay, this is what MUFON does. I got to do another commercial for MUFON there, Tom. This is MUFON, and that's why it's important that you be part of this. You have to support these organizations. Their job, and I remember when I started working with Hynek, he used to make me put pins in a map. We were putting pins, so he'd say, Paula, in Indiana, there are like 5 sightings, and I was put 5 pins in a map. So you see what's happening. Now that over the years, I go, if there's 5 pins in Indiana, something's going on in Indiana. Like there was something going on at O'Hare Airport when they had the sighting over the airport at O'Hare. That thing was not on vacation, sitting over gate C-32, and I think it was C-32. I went to see that gate, and the pilots saw it, and all the people at United were asked to keep quiet. And I think that thing was making a statement. People have seen this. This is the SOM 101. It's the government Majestic 12. A manual, both Ryan Wood and Bob Wood, and I'll talk about them a little bit because Bob Wood he just retired from MUFON. He worked for Lockheed Martin. He's an amazing researcher. His son Ryan. They found these documents, which means if the government is putting out extraterrestrial entities and technology recovery and disposal, they exist. This is the manual, and you can get that from Ryan Wood if you want to order that manual, okay? Now, what happened to me is real interesting. I was invited to Canada to speak at a panel with Stanton Friedman, Richard Dolan, Steve Bassett, and the former defense minister. And I couldn't make it. I was in Italy because I had a procedure done at the hospital, so I couldn't make it. On my own, I flew to Canada because Paul Hellyer said that he had read Colonel Corso's book and that his son had called a general in the United States. This is when Corso's already dead because this was like in 2004. He said that the general said Corso was telling the truth and more, and more. The statement he made at this conference in Toronto, it was 2005, the conference, was UFOs. This is the former defense minister of Canada who is equal to McNamara. He is nobody off the street. I love this guy. He's 92 years old. I just spoke to him last week. He is a hero. Recognize the heroes, please. They are the heroes that come forth. He says, he said to me, he said to the world, and everybody went there, UFOs are as real as airplanes over our heads. Do you want more disclosure than that? That's the former defense minister of Canada saying that. He called to find out if Corso's book was real and found out that the back engineering is the real problem with the disclosure. So is that on YouTube? Yes. You can see it. I went back in 2010 and did a second interview with him on my own dime. But look who was there. Look who was there. This really upsets me in a way because they didn't care. They didn't do anything about it. Here's Steve, here's Richard Dolan, and here's Stanton Friedman. Stanton doesn't want to hear about Corso, so he's not going to talk about Paul Hellyer. So the thing is that these guys are all there with him, And I'm in Italy, and I fly back to talk to him. And I wonder, what's wrong with them? They should have been talking to him. I've been to his house. I've talked to him about his career, about what led him to say that. It's very, very interesting, because this is not somebody off the street. It's a former defense minister of Canada during the 60s. So Paul Hellyer, he said, I read Corso's book and I knew it was authentic. I asked myself, this is part of the interview, by the way, would anyone be capable of making that fiction? I only read a few books a year, and the Corso book, by accident, by coincidence, came across my desk at 90 years old. He was getting married at 90 years old, too, so I was really surprised. He said, I told my future wife I was only going to speak once at the University of Toronto. I told her, don't worry about it, I'm going to say, and he's still speaking about it 2 years later. So the thing is that, it's really hard on the families of these people. Because I've talked to Sandra, and he said he was going to speak once. Now he's all over the place. He's like at all conferences. He was at MUFON's International Conference in Irvine, California, Paul Hellyer. Anyway, and the answer, I said, no, that couldn't be, because there are too many times, too many names, too many places, too many references that I would know as former defense minister that I recognize as being legitimate. This is the man that verified Corso more than anybody. All of a sudden, I became deeply interested and deeply concerned. Remember, I told you political and sociological implications? And I said, I heard that you call this 4-star general. He said, I'm not at liberty to say who it was and how many stars he had, but after reading the book, he said, he said, every word is true, and I want to get, the general wanted to get his hands on Corso's book. Okay, protocols. Okay, so in 1945, we did something pretty bad. We exploded the atomic bomb at the Trinity site in New Mexico. It caught the attention of the world and of the other worlds. And that is what the problem was with the crash saucers, because that area of New Mexico, Roswell is where the 509th Bomb Squadron was housed, where we dropped those 2 bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. They didn't, the things that happened didn't happen because these beings are on vacation. It was a change in our timeline, a change in our history. We had discovered, I don't know who said it, the kids have discovered the matches. We had the ability to kill ourselves, kill the planet, and also whatever happened went into their dimension, because this is a dimensional problem. So they said, well, they're messing around with nuclear. Oppenheimer and Einstein were very concerned. When I did the 1945 crash case, and there was a crash in 1945 in San Antonio, New Mexico, I saw where Oppenheimer was housed. He was housed right there near Trinity, and he and Einstein had a discussion about this, and they wrote a paper to President Truman called Relationships with Inhabitants of Celestial Bodies. Now, these are not 2 people off the street. You can read it in my book, because I have this whole document. Did it get to President Truman? Because they said, look, we just exploded the bomb, and we've got all these UFOs all over the place. We can see them. There's photos of all the scientists with the UFOs. There's photos that you could look them up. They're in black and white. But those 2 guys were concerned. And if you go to Trinity right now, I don't know if you know about the life of Oppenheimer, but people should study history too. He was a pacifist towards the end of his life. His security clearance was taken away from him. And if you go to Trinity's site, there is a plaque there where Oppenheimer quotes the Bhagavad Gita that says, I am death, the killer of worlds. And Oppenheimer discovered it. He was working on death, the killer of worlds. And, it's really important, because this, what I'm teaching you, or what I'm telling you, is history. It's not something I'm making up. This document is in one of my books. I think it may be in that one, but it talks about, it says, at any rate, international law should make place for a new law on a different basis, and it might be called Law Among Planetary Peoples, following the guidelines found in the Pentash, obviously the idea of revolutionizing international law to the point where it would be capable of coping with new situations would compel us to change the structure, a change so basic that would no longer be international law. In other words, these guys are telling Truman, look, there are other people out there, and they're coming, and they are watching what we did. And what we should do with them? Give them a piece of land? Have you even discovered? Should we give them their own area? How should we deal with the protocols of contact? What protocols, like if they come down and talk to us, who do they talk to? This is a planet that is confined by borders. I remember talking to Edgar Mitchell, who is Apollo 6 astronaut and the sixth man to walk on the moon. And I sat with him and I interviewed him, and I said, Edgar, you walked on the moon and you saw the Earth from far away. Do you think we're ready for disclosure? He said, no. I said, why? He said, because when I was out in space, there were no borders. He said, and when these people come, where are they going to go? To the Chinese? To the Russians? To the Americans? He said, until we become one species, human species, we are not capable of really having formal contact with other cultures. And it's interesting because in that document, and I use it now all the time because, I'm always told, don't use alien, don't use alien. I use the word, and Eisenhower and Oppenheimer, they have it in that document. They call them cosmic cultures. Then they find what culture is. Culture is you have, literature, you have a way of living, you come from somewhere else. And John Mack, before he died, said to me, Paula, unless humanity changes its worldview, what it believes, that means not putting everything in a box, we cannot really accept this, but we have to change our minds, the way we look at things, keep it open. I have no problem with that because I don't need to have an answer. I just do the work. I don't have to have the bottom line. I don't know what it is. I just do the work, which is interesting. So let me tell you about Colonel Corso really fast because we got to take, in 10 minutes, I'm going to play another clip for you that'll be 15 minutes long, and then we will take a break. And then I'll come back and tell you about the rest. But I was in Italy in 1997. I was having a very hard time. I was working for the magazine, but I had just broken up with a relationship I had that had gone on for 4 years. And Mauricio says to me, you got to go to Roswell. It's a big party. It's 50th anniversary. And you have to meet this Colonel Philip Corso because his book is so big. And we need to have him here in Italy. And you got to go. And I said, I don't want to go. I just don't feel like doing it. And I don't want to fly across the ocean and drive to Roswell from Colorado. It's 3 hours and so forth. At that time, Richard Sigismund, and I don't know, I'm going to show you his picture, who works with Hynek, wrote to my office and said, we will take Paula to Roswell. We will wait for her at the airport. So I had no choice because Sigismund's going to be there. We're going to drive three hours to Roswell, and I have to do the story. I mean, it's all set up. I couldn't get out of it. And when we got to Roswell, they had booked since February, because it was 50th anniversary. Who was there? John Mack, Linda Howe, Bud Hopkins, Willie Strieber. All of the biggies were there. But the big star was this book. And so they had booked. It was a big party, the 50th anniversary. It was on Time magazine cover. Did anybody have that cover? It's famous. It's got a human female head with two big eyes. If you have that cover, it was on Time magazine. It was an event. It was an event. So I said to Richard in the car, I've got no place to sleep. And he said, well, he said, we're staying in Artesia. It's 40 miles away. I said, I can't cover a story 40 miles away. How will I get to all the places? So I stopped at the press club. I said, I'm a journalist. I'm from Italy. I need a place to sleep because I got to cover the story. And they said, good luck. We'll give you the phone book. They threw it at me. I opened up the yellow pages. I just picked any hotel. It was a Sally Port Inn. And I had the room next to Philip Corso. You think that isn't a coincidence? I didn't even know what he looked like. I never read the book. I never saw the copy of the book. I never saw anything. So I got this room for 3 days. I thought I was really lucky because that was where everybody was staying. I mean, Willie Strieber was staying there, Linda Howe was staying there, everybody was staying there. So in any case, what happened was I went to the UFO museum. I'm doing a live streaming, by the way, from the museum. And Corso was there, and he was talking. And he was on the stage in a panel like this at the museum. And I was standing there going, how am I ever going to get to talk to that guy? Because Simon & Schuster has him, you know, they've got him sequestered so he can't talk to any journalists. So there was a blonde guy standing next to me, and he said, "You're from Italy?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Ask my father a question in Italian." I said, "Are you Corso's son?" And he goes, "Yes." And I said, "Well, I don't want to be in the cameras." And he took his hand, he pushed me in the middle of the crowd. So I had no choice, the cameras were on me, and in Italian I said, "Mi puoi dire che cosa pensi del film Santilli?" Would tell me about the Santilli autopsy footage. And he answered me. He said, "Well, you know, we had paid $10,000 for that footage. We had that all over Italian television. I don't know if you've seen it. You know, the autopsy footage in those days. It's Santilli autopsy footage, if you want to look it up." He said, "You know, when they peeled off the lens from the being's eye, and there was an iris under there," he said, "I thought it was pretty real." He said, "Because one of the artifacts that I got from General Trudeau in that file was a plastic-looking lens that was the lens over the being. So those gray beings are wearing sunglasses. That is a light collector." And he said it in front of everybody. He said, "You know," he said, "I had that thing, and we used to walk up and down the halls of the Pentagon and see the furniture at night because we could see through this lens." And he said, "We use that." Now, this is 1963. "To back engineer night screening devices for our soldiers in Vietnam." So he said that film to me seems real. So the argument is, and I'm going to put this out here before everybody says anything, and this is a UFO community for you because they don't look at everything. You know, some of that fiber optics, night screening devices, high tenacity fibers, and microchips were already in the mainstream. Of course they were, because when we had a crash in 1945, but I'm going to say 1947, I did the 1945 crash. When we have all that stuff, we are not going to throw it in the trash. And in 1947, the Army and the Air Force were one. They broke off separately from Army and Air Force, so you don't think the Air Force got a few of those things? The only difference is they didn't have a Philip Corso to talk about it. So 1947, it's really 1945 because the crash saucer, it took 8 days to clean that up, and they brought it somewhere, and I'm sure they didn't throw it away. So you've got this progression of all these years of this stuff, and you're going to try to figure out how it works. So if you are Air Force, you're going to be in competition for contracts with the Army and the Navy. And by the way, the Navy is in charge of UFOs. They told me that down at NASA. You know, I have a person that was a whistleblower down there, and he told me that the admiral that got all the pilots were Navy pilots. So but I went to NASA to find that out. The thing is this, that you got the Air Force breaking off from the Army in 1947, they're going to have some of that stuff. Because what Corso got was the Roswell artifacts. He got the fiber optics. He said he just held them and they all lit up. I told you about the lens. Then he said he had this pen-like instrument, and he's repeated this over and over again. You might even get a tape of that, but he said the pen-like instrument, he thought the batteries were dead until he went to Fort Belvoir, Maryland, the Army place where he put long, low waves, and a laser came out. So this doctor in Durango, Colorado, contacts Corso and says, "Will you tell me about that instrument?" And Corso has an audio tape actually the doctor gave me the audio tape of him talking to Corso about it, and I'll tell you a little bit about one of the instruments. This instrument, he had the laser instrument, but he had to put long, low waves on it, and God knows what that thing did. He had a second instrument, he said, that was like a scalpel that would actually cut and suture. And he told the doctor, he said, the second instrument, he said, that would cut and suture, he said, I had that. He said, and I heard that American doctors went to Russia and actually bought it because the Russians had it. And they brought it back to the United States, and then the Russian doctors sued them because this belonged to Russia from maybe a crash. We weren't the only ones with crashes. If you want to buy a book that you want to have in your library, it's called Majestic Eyes Only by Ryan Wood. 93 crashes all over the world. And he's very good. It's Bob Wood's son. You know, Bob Wood he's the best of the best. But anyway, the thing is this. So the Russians had this thing. And the doctor in Durango said, oh my God, if I had like something that could cut and then, you know, suture, no, bloodless, it was bloodless, you know, then I could use it. And Corso said, I don't know what to tell you. He said, I had it as part of the materials that I got from Trudeau, but it's already in the mainstream. In other words, it's already, the Russians have it. So, you know, I got that in my book because I have the tape, the audio tape of the doctor. Corso wanted, he said, look, we had, whatever we had, he said, in the file, my job was to go to big companies, and he names them. They're in the back of the book. He named them. I did, not me. And Bell Labs was one of them. And he said, and I would give them either the artifact or the description of it, tell them to back engineer it. And he said, I would bring my German scientists, and he mentions the name of the people he brought. He worked with Saarbacher and Oberth, Hermann Oberth. And if you look up Hermann Oberth, he's very much into UFOs. He was one of the paperclip people. And Colonel Corso was involved with the paperclip scientists, the German scientists that they're using now in the secret space program to talk about that stuff. But he actually worked with these guys. And he said, I'd bring my German scientists, because this is all on audio tape. And he said, and I have it, you know, as an interview there. And he said, if they like what they saw, I would give them an envelope of cash so they couldn't follow the paper trail. And he said, if they didn't like what they saw, and then he talks about the state of the art and they wanted more money and so forth. That was his job. So when he went to these companies, there's the day after Roswell, I wrote the preface for that. We translated it. Maurizio translated it at our office. And by the way, we're re-releasing it on the 13th when I go in Italy. And there is Maurizio, my boss, right there. And there's Colonel Corso and me in Italy. This is me with Colonel Corso at Easter. Now, so I've told you what he was in charge of. Now, Colonel Corso started his career, and I have all of his documents, at the age of 26 as the head of the counterintelligence corps in Rome. So he was a very young man in charge of it. He showed me his office. When I was in Rome, I dragged him all over the city and made him show me everything because I wanted to make sure he was telling the truth. He even said, this is a side story. He said, we were on the corner of Via Veneto and Via Sicilia. And he said, this used to be, he said, a nightclub where a black singer used to sing and had a beautiful white piano. We used to go hear her. And I said, oh, really? And I walked in and I said to the guy, did this used to be a nightclub back in 1945? Was there a way? Because it's a restaurant now. It's a bar. It's a restaurant. And he said, go down 3 floors. So we walked down 3 floors, and there's the white piano. Because that's the kind of work that I do. I want to make sure these, and then there's pictures of all these soldiers on the wall who used to go there, you know, and so forth. So his career started in Italy as counterintelligence. What happened was that he basically wrote 3 books. Colonel Corso was on the Warren Commission. He wrote The Day After Dallas. I don't think it'll ever see the light of day. He wrote a book called The Day After Rome, which is a story of the intelligence community and the inception of CIA, which he was not nuts about. I don't think that's going to come out. And The Day After Roswell, which came out at the 50th anniversary. So when we come back from, I'm going to let you see him talk now so that you can hear him. This man is not lying. And then I will tell you what happened to Colonel Corso when he had contact with the being. Okay? When you come back. So we can play the clip now.
I just mentioned to you crop circles, mutilation of animals, and abductions of humans. When I was chief of the 4th Technology Division, I went to the general one day and it was agreed that we would start no projects in the Army, in our division, our area, with the money we had in the organization, on those 3 items: crop circles, mutilations, and abductions. But we would watch them. We would keep getting the reports and watch them, but start no projects, because our main objective in those days was weapons of war. We called it to advance the competitive edge of the Army. Even the beings, it didn't matter to us whether they were real or not. And it didn't matter if they came here by accident or design. But our motto was, if they're real, we're going to be ready. We're not going to sit here like stupid beings and say they aren't around. We have to work on assumptions that they are there. And we have to work on the assumption that they might be enemies. So we have to be ready. So I told the general, our main thrust, and I hardly got enough time to do what I'm doing. So what I'll do is, because I had the type of thing, I could read a document and remember it, and read it in a matter of a minute or so. I told him, I'll keep getting these reports and watch this, but we will do nothing about it. Only collect information. And for years I collected documents here at the White House, which talked about mutilations. We know about them. We made the decision that crop circles were nothing else, I guess, but integrated circuits, and we put them in an integrated circuit, they would give us a message. Abductions, we came to the conclusion they're happening. But we're not going to do anything about it, even start any projects, whether it's true or not. But we were receiving material, so I did get 2 of the implants. The implants are real. There's other implants which I've never talked about that we knew were real. And you couldn't take them in your hand because they were microscopic, but they were there. So the future has to go along those lines. I know from my own, when I was working at this, I know that they're real, they happen. I don't think any other of those people who are talking can say this. They weren't cleared. They didn't get the reports. They didn't have access to them. Yeah, they talked to abductee, they talked to them, and then what happens? The critic says, hallucination, self-hypnotism, and you're finished. How are you going past that? The only way you can pass that, like I told this little girl, she didn't quite understand it. When I tell you that there was 2 implants from abductee, that makes you authentic. Use it. You make your living at it, and I like you. Use my name if you want to. Go ahead. Tell them Colonel Corso told me this. But it's in an area that we never did anything about. We never put out research and development projects. We never looked into the reason for it, because we had our hands full of what we were doing. That wasn't my job to do that. And I briefed the general that we shouldn't do it. Watch it, but don't do anything about it. We didn't spend a penny on projects of that type. Our money went, like I told you, on a night viewing device, millions of dollars. That was a product of war. Soldiers in Vietnam could see the enemy at night. That's what we were working on, lasers, fiber optics, communication. So those were the main thrust of our organization. The extraterrestrial himself, I always say, that's the greatest gift they gave us, and we did nothing with it. And who was in charge? I was. So that meant I did nothing with it. Now, in my old age, maybe I feel guilty, and I've been writing about it now. When I wrote to my own doctor, the thing I gave you, I put it in an envelope, took it to the doctor, this friend of mine, and on the envelope I wrote, "Help, doctor." He knew what I meant, the lymphatic system. He's a surgeon. He's expert at that. He operates in that area. I'm no doctor. I can't carry that on. I don't know anything about what I know about the lymphatic system, what I read. But here's a man who saves people alive, like he saved mine doing that, knowing what's there. The lungs, not all the same thing. Experts have to come into this and look at this entity or this being. After all, he is a biological entity. All these stories of clone, oh, it's against religion, and it's awful, man wants to live forever, and it affects the emotion. That's all baloney. It doesn't enter into this area alone. It doesn't enter this area at all. Because that clone was made for another purpose. He's not in the ordinary sense that we write what clones are like. Made it for another purpose, to travel in space. They want to see what space is like. They came here. Without that, the way that was made with the flying saucer, they would have never made it here. Maybe they have something else, I don't know, but I don't know of any.
Can I switch to another subject for a second?
Yeah.
Like there was in Brasilia at the First World Forum in Brasilia, a guy named Hellyer. This researcher stated that in the last 50 years, maybe, but to be more precise, 35 years, 167 UFO researchers died for unknown causes, such as strange suicides or heart attacks, very sudden heart attacks with no medical records before, and eventually brain tumors and so far so on. His theory was that the UFO researchers are very keen to disappear sooner or later for no reasons, for no apparent reasons.
I can't give you credibility on that story, because from what you told me, there are many, many cases where people die from tumors when they haven't never had anything before. There are many cases when they die from disease which they never showed before. There are many thousands of cases where people have never had a heart pain and die all at once of a heart attack. There's too many cases where that happens to humans. So I can't go back and say, when a doctor can come to me and say, hey, Corso, what are you talking about? I know about 1,000 cases of people died of heart attacks. I can't isolate it to the flying saucer caused that, because there's too much of that happening every day anyway.
Yeah,
I couldn't say that. No, I can't come and tell you I know.
Don't have a suicidal tendency. I mean, I don't have it.
It happens every day, suicides. You know, see, I can't come and isolate and say, I know that this happened because a flying saucer came down. I have no. A critic can come up and say, well, what about these other millions of cases happened over the ages of suicides, of diseases, of heart attacks? You see, I don't know anything about that. I've never seen anything that can prove that. Okay. One way, prove it or disprove it. I never bothered to look into it.
Yeah, but there's a possibility the government or the secret or Indian government or occult theocracy wants to...
Rachel, you've asked me this. Yeah, there's a possibility for almost everything. But I won't talk about, if I say there's a possibility this happened, I'll say that there's a possibility, and I'll tell people there's conjecture and guesswork on my part. And that's all it is. Don't ask me for evidence because I can't supply it. I don't know it. And the same thing you're just telling me. I can't say yes, that it happened. I can say it could happen, but I'm guessing.
All right, but in the intelligence field, you were supposed to eliminate enemies, isn't it? Physically.
Yes, I was in some cases.
So let's wonder for a second that the UFO researchers are enemies, are foreseen as enemies, or they're dangerous eventually.
I told you one time, for the moment, the gist of it, I did say, no, I won't come aboard because I don't trust you. You've performed too many overt acts against my people. You have killed us, you have destroyed aircraft, you have destroyed people on the ground, you have abducted. Yes, you're
I have to classify you, since I'm military, as an enemy, because you have done these things. But the thing is, I never knew if they were done by design or by accident. Since we never knew this, I discussed with the general, but in case they are enemies, let's be ready. We never proved that they were enemies or not enemies. I remember on one occasion, I came up with a thing, are you a friend or enemy? Neither. What was I going to tell General Trudeau? I said, neither. He said, what the heck's that? You mean that do you mean that we don't make the weapons or we make them? The logical thing of somebody with intelligence, no, we got to keep on making weapons, just in case they are enemies. We're responsible for the security of the nation. Like when Chris Wallace asked me one day on the TV, 2020, no, it wasn't 2020, it was his program. He asked me, he said, Colonel, tell us about the Cold War. I said, Chris, please, would you stop there? I'm not trying to be funny or anything. I don't know of any Cold War. Every war that I was involved in, even later, when it was supposed to be Cold War, was a hot war. People were shooting each other and killing each other. Tell these boys when those aircraft, when the MiG came out with a 30-millimeter cannon, there was a Cold War. And I told him, this is not being funny, I don't want to answer you, this is the truth. So later he took me, we walked from the White House, and he had cameramen going alongside of us. And Chris Wallace stopped. And he said, Colonel, I'm just thinking what you said. And he said, now I can understand. You people were responsible for security of the nation. You had to think that way. That there was no... How could you think that there was a Cold War when your own soldiers were being killed fighting the Russians on the borders? That wasn't a Cold War, that was a hot war. I told him, that's the only wars, unfortunately, that I've been involved in, Chris. I can't tell you about any such thing that was made up in the newspapers, a Cold War. There was no such thing. This is the same thing, what question you asked me. I got to tell you, Mauricio, there's no way in the world where I can tell you that they won't attack us. But from a soldier, I got to be ready for any attack that might come. If I'm not, I'm negligent, and I shouldn't be dressed in a military uniform. And that's the same thing that General Trudeau, who commanded the division at Port Chop Hill, who was a corps commander. Same thing. Got to be ready for every eventuality, otherwise you'll be destroyed, and your country will go with it. So this thinking, maybe you say, well, military men think that way. We had to think that way. As far as flying saucers came, we still had to, our thinking didn't change. It was the same thinking going over to them. Just in case, we're going to be ready. We didn't say in case we're going to be friends. We didn't care. Friends or enemies, we're going to be ready.
Let's just suggest.
It's logical.
All right. That one day they invade us. It's just a pure suggestion. It's just a speculation.
All right.
Is that possible that the end of the war will be determined by hand-to-hand combat? I mean,
I'll answer your question this way. You say they're going to invade us, maybe. Will they fight, if they're superintelligence, will they fight wars on our level? Will they fight with cannon and weapons or guns? Or will they fight us on another level? That's my answer. You want to hear more about that answer? Let's take one item. I don't say that they put it in this world or they made it, but it's a possibility. HIV appeared in this world in 1985. Some people say, well, it went back to animals in Africa. But it happens to be HIV in the human being is not a virus as we think is a virus. It's a living entity in itself. And it's in our bodies, and when you catch it, you die. It's a living entity by itself. If we kill HIV in a human being, we got to kill the living entity, which is we call a virus. Won't a super race, a super intellect that won't fight us with stupid weapons that are not much more advanced than, say, the crossbow, with a gun and bombs and bombs? Why should they fight us on this? If they're super intelligent, they'll find another way to fight us, maybe on another level.
Okay, that's why I'm asking you. The final combat has to be eventually struggled between beings fighting hand to hand. That's my idea. In other words, you've been in different situations of war. Obviously, if you want to conquer a certain territory, and you race down everything with bombings and so far so on, but then again, your troops have to advance and go and conquer the place, isn't it? And maybe you can find enemies hidden somewhere, and it will be a confrontation, a very physical confrontation.
But when they come up with a confrontation, I don't think it'll be on our level.
But if they have to conquer territory, physically territory, that would be on.
Not necessarily. They don't have to do it with bombs and guns. I say they're an intellect is on another level. And I think we were foolish. Now, we thought this, and we had to do it because we didn't know anything else. Back in my day, we developed weapons of war. But they were advanced weapons of war, with laser and things of that type. Missiles, large missiles that we made. And we even tried to make a helmet that the pilot could guide the airplane by thought waves. We were starting to work on that. That's pretty much a different level than we're talking about fighting a war like we fought in Italy with bombs and guns. I'd be foolish to think, although we could do nothing else, we made weapons, but we tried to make advanced weapons that maybe we could reach them if they tried anything like this. But we're never sure that they would fight on our level. And I'm still not sure whether they'll fight on our level. Why should they if it's a super intellect? Fight us with bombs and cannons? They couldn't carry enough bombs and cannons in their spaceships to fight us. That's not the way they'll fight us. They'll fight us, they'll study our bodies, and attack us with something that they have, which there's no weight, it doesn't carry it on. And they could attack look right now, if they attack us only on a level that destroy our immune system, like the doctor said, I just like committing suicide. Send somebody into space and comes back with his immune system. The first disease that attacks him will kill him because the body can't destroy it itself. This is what I think of super intellect. And I think it's logical. The super intellect will fight us on that level. And we're not sure what level they'll fight us. They're supposed to be far above us. What you describe, the battle you described to me, what we would do, move in that area, you're thinking of almost World War I. That's what I did when I was in Italy, because we didn't know anything else. We'd bomb a city, attack, counterattack, destroy with artillery, and then move in. That's all we knew, to fight like barbarians. I think if we give them credit, a little bit of credit for being a super intellect, they'll never fight us that way. It'd be stupid. And I don't think that they're stupid. If they were able to create an extraterrestrial biological entities, that's a creation of a super intelligence. See, it's all the maneuvers in space and all the dangers in space, it has solved the problem. That's the sign of a super intelligence. And if they fight us or destroy us, even some of these people you just told me to give these lectures and say it'll be this way. Unfortunately, they're thinking in our terms. They're thinking like human beings and not like them. The little thing that I said about the flashlight when I said, I was serious when I said that. I was like a stupid human. I thought the battery was dead. That's stupidity. A thing I got from space, and I sit there, and I'm supposed to be in charge, and I say, the battery's dead, and I put it away. What can be more stupid? Because I was, even in another case, my answer was, stupid again, thinking like a human, what's in it for me? What a hell of a question to ask a super race. And that's stupidity. And I was serious when I said that. People laughed, but that was serious. When I thought it over, how dumb could I get to think there was a battery in this thing that came from space? A battery that wears out. And right now, I'm wearing a wristwatch. My son bought me this wristwatch because right on the back it says no battery ever available in it. And I'll read for you what it says. This is the type of thing where, let's see, it says something like here, I can't see it in there. Never put a battery in it. It's a lifetime battery in this watch. So you see what I'm talking about? They don't go put a little battery in that wears out in 2 weeks in anything that they make. So but I wasn't thinking in those terms. I was thinking like a human being. So these aren't easy things to answer. And a lot of people say you're guessing. Yes, in some cases I am. It's conjecture. I've tried to build it up from what I know. And this is the same thing that the British taught me. The British taught me when I worked for them years ago that you don't, in intelligence, yes, look for targets and things. But that's not the main issue. The main thing you look for is intentions. They were right. You defeat an enemy by knowing his intentions, not by one bomb. And this is the same thing as this. I had to figure, and so some of it's going to be guesswork, naturally, to build up the mosaic. And I say, I have to think in my own brain, what's his intention? Naturally, I'm going to make mistakes because I don't know too much about him. But at least I can try. And where in this new science, you might be able to fill in or correct the mistakes that I've made because of lack of knowledge. And this is what I think it has to come to. Now, another thing, Richard, I've never talked like this to anybody because this wasn't a thing that discuss in these terms. Maybe with a couple of my science friends I have, but usually I don't.
But do you think that we do have some Italian scientists ready to help us?
Sure you do. The way I know this, they've been calling me. And you know what the main thing they were calling me about that's in the book? When I stated in one line or so in the book that this extraterrestrial is part of the flying saucer, they're all one. This is what they're calling me about, that they want to know. Because their opinion is true. They'll help. You got people like Malegno, what's his name? He'll help. Yes, a man sick. But that lecture he gave, he'll want to help. People like that will come forward. But when? I don't know when. One day the general told me, when I told him that if we put this implant, ever put it in the human brain, what are we unleashing on the world? One thing the general said, he said, Phil, yes, it's a danger. Hope the people come after us understand, but it might not be in our lifetime. It wasn't in his lifetime. He died in 1992. And that's true. His words were correct. So that's the answer. These are another intelligence. They're ahead of us. They've proven it. In only one simple reason. They can fly in space and we can't. So it boils down to that simple. How are you going to overcome that? We don't know anything about the how. So we got to start with what we know. The little we know is the greatest gift they gave us, the extraterrestrial, not the hardware. And that's the point that I think we reached. Maybe that's my own preaching. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I can be wrong. That's the way I believe.
Now, this is a very sensitive subject that Malanga studied very deeply. He believes that the Frenchies, they know a lot of stuff. In Europe, the most advanced people in terms of military apparatuses and so far so on are the Francesi.
Who?
French.
French, yeah.
French militaries. And we wonder if the French, they know more than anybody else in Europe. Because we suppose that they do have alien bases in their own territory. And maybe we do have also alien bases here in Italy. Is that possible?
Yes, it's possible. I don't know anything about it because I never bothered to look in that area. The British, after all, they got to Punamundo before we did. They got the documents out of there, what the Germans were doing. So the British might be more advanced than we are. That I don't know. I can't answer that, yes or no. I don't know. It's possible. Yeah, everything's possible. People even come to me and say, well, we have there's underground bases in the South Pole. My answer to that is, you know what it takes to keep a base in the South Pole? You know what it takes to supply a base? After all, if there's a base like that in the South Pole, you have to have humans in it. You know what it takes to make humans survive down there? What a tremendous effort it would be. And you think that could be hidden for 50 years or 40 years or 10 years or even 1 year? Can't be. We had a base in Greenland. And we made special an atomic device to send up our portable to give them water, heat, and electricity. Otherwise, they couldn't survive. They could survive only possibly maybe 1 year. And after 6 years, even with those advancements, we took the base away and left it. Because it was too harsh living conditions. We haven't solved those problems that live like that yet. So when these people tell me about the bases in the South Pole, underground, under the ice, and then they come in and say there's a Shangri-La there. So wait, how come we never heard of this? How come I had all the clearances and never heard of such a thing? But be logical. Just think what it takes to survive in that environment. We aren't that advanced yet. We might have gotten that, but through stupidity otherwise, they made us destroy those things. And you have them, now I give you a copy of them. Written by the U.S. Army, unclassified. You want it? Here, look at it. Here it is. How we made them. Pictures, how they were made. What have we done with them? Nothing. In fact, we did the opposite. We destroyed them. We were given instructions to get rid of them. So, you see, when I hear these things that there are bases in France and bases in England, I say, yeah, it could be. But just think of it. What it takes just to keep something like that secret. Almost an impossibility. Even the U.S. government, they say the U.S. government kept it all secret. It really wasn't kept secret by design. The system itself does it. And I always tell people, let the government alone, it'll cover itself up. So this is my answer. It's possible. I can't sit here and say, no, it's impossible. But I can say this. Maybe it's illogical, not there. Because the evidence can't be hidden that long. So on the other side, I got to say, I'm not going to look for it. I'm not going to try finding the information because I think I'm wasting my time. I'll work with what I got and know. This is my answer, man. This is to be a realist. Even when I was working with General Trudeau, he called me in one day and he said, you're going to be project officer on the anti-missile missile. And don't tell me you don't have the time. I know you don't, but you'll do it. I'll put you in charge. You get us started at the right time. You recommend somebody who will take over for you. I was too busy even to do that, but he made me do it, and I did it. And it worked out pretty good. And now I'm look back, I'm glad he put me in charge. I was actually the first project officer on an anti-missile missile. I'm glad I did it now, but you see what I was up against, what you're up against, things like, how long can you keep things quiet? How much can you do?
Now, going back to those 2 or 3 discs that you recovered, the one you saw.
I saw 2 of them, yeah.
You saw 2 of them?
Yeah.
Where?
Well, the one I don't talk about. I think you know where it was. And even on this show, this guy mentioned that machine, and then I didn't say anything else. The one I saw was at one of the air bases. Yeah, I'm not going to say where it was, but it was there. And that was it. I didn't go in it. And I say that I had a lot of information on what was inside. There was nothing I could gain by going inside and looking at it. I had the drawings, how it looked inside. I had what was in there. And really, to go in, it would have been curiosity. And in those days, I didn't have the time for your curiosity. Since I knew already what was there and I had the reports, knowing what would I gain by going in there? I had to take off anyway and go back. And it wasn't, in those days, it wasn't like something new that I was discovering new. I knew about the things. And so I let it go. Yeah, there was curiosity. At times I liked to see what was in there. But not always. I've gone in new projects, new airplanes we built to see what they were. But in many cases, I knew what was there already. And remember, I didn't have that much time. Really, when I was working in research and development, the time element was one of the things. There wasn't enough hours in the day to do what I was doing.
Who were the scientists working on that craft, for instance?
Oh, I don't know.
Aerospace people, technicians?
They were mostly, they called themselves aerospace technicians in large. But then many times I've questioned that definition too. Were they really aerospace technicians? Because I know people in the UFO field now call themselves nuclear physicists, nuclear. What did they do? I don't have any idea what they do. Where did they get that name? That they fabricated themselves? I used to go to Belvoir to our atomic labs that belonged to us and we financed. And they created atomic engineering. That didn't make me a nuclear physicist. In fact, more like when I'd go there, I was the dumbest one in the area because everybody else knew what they were doing. I didn't know. I just go there because I happened to be the one that was in the higher headquarters and worked on the budget for them. So there's a lot of things happening. And a lot of the books, people say, well, he's read the books. I never read any of these UFO books. The only two books I've ever read were Jack Valley's books because I knew I met him. He was considered a friend, and we talked about it. I never read any of these other books because I figured, what? It's the same thing. They talk to maybe a different witness, and that's all can be there. And how much did the witness know? And then I asked the question, were you there when I was doing this work? What clearances did you have? That answers the question, and they shy away from that. They don't want to answer those questions. And you have to look at the people who call themselves professional speakers. They get around and give the little lectures, they get paid for it. And it don't matter. I figure it's a way of life. Let them alone. I don't care. I'm not going to discuss this with them. They criticize me, so what? Let them criticize. They'll fall their own weight. It doesn't matter. In fact, to tell you the truth, there's a lot of times I've thought lately, why the heck did I write this book? Why did I just forget it and go back in my easy chair? Why did I do it? Now there's other books to be written. And many times I look at them all and I figure, why don't I throw them away and get rid of them and forget it? Then I look at my kids, my grandchildren, and I figure, well, I better not forget it. Maybe I'll do something with it. I gave this talk to 2,500 people up in Washington. They were all sitting on the ground. And I told this story many times. I hope, I say, why don't I throw them away and destroy them? And they all looked at me, so I told them, but I'll tell you what, I promise you I won't destroy them. They started to clap. Everyone gave me an ovation, and I said, that simple little thing. I told them, in fact, I get the urge to destroy them, and I look at my grandchildren, I think, I can't destroy them. There's nothing else, I'll leave it for them.
Okay, I don't understand one part of your reconstruction of the entire situation pertaining to the physical body of the alien, that's integrated part of the craft. When he fades, when he disappears because he's out of his environment, electromagnetic environment, he dies. What happens to the craft? If the craft is also an integrated part, or is the envelope of the creature,
Yeah.
supposedly also the craft is affected by time.
It's affected because it has an atomic structure around it. And remember, it builds up a plasma area around the outside. And like Olbert said, it has an electromagnetic surrounding. It pushes through air in this world, and it collects its energy from Einstein's words. Space is an atomistic structure, and it draws atoms from space. For a certain time longer than the body, I think, this is what I think, there's enough electromagnetism in this world where it can draw. So the extraterrestrial, he's a little different. He's composed in a way of cells also, like humans are. This structure has some metallic surroundings, so it has to survive in space, from debris in space, which keeps striking it constantly. It'll knock holes in it. So there's a little different strength there that will last a few more years. It is really almost a biological type of biological structure, because the extraterrestrial fits in it, but made with a little more strength that's needed in the extra. Remember, these cloners that made these things made them in a way where they would fit in what they wanted them to fit in. The ship itself is maybe a biological type structure because of the cell and the atom structure, but it's all created with more strength because it has to resist more. This being is protected in a way. Now, when this being comes in this world, he will wear a suit, skin-tight suit, which we found. His skin is atomically aligned, and his suit is atomically aligned. That's to repel radiation and harmful effects, even cosmic action. Since he doesn't breathe air, the ones that come alive in this world will have a type of helmet on them. And since he doesn't speak, he has no vocal cords, he will have something that intensifies that transmission, that he maybe can communicate. And actually, I think that they've been seen this way.
So the machines, sooner or later, will fade away, will disappear.
Sooner or later, it'll disappear. Remember, basically, the structure is like ours. And I don't, Bill, let it sit out. It's all iron and steel, but eventually it'll rust and fade away and disappear, and not be worth anything. Give it enough years, the whole world's like it. The world changes its structure, and leave it alone for years.
So if we are talking about 61, 62, 63, and now we are 98, maybe in 30, 35, 36 years, they disappear though.
Well, I never figured what the time element is. I can't tell you if it'll be 35 years, 40 or 50. I've never gotten into that to do that. So I don't know really. I can't answer the question.
I cannot imagine the frustration of these American engineers seeing the machines disappearing in front of their own eyes.
There have been frustrations in the extraterrestrial in studying it. It would decompose and it would almost disappear in front of your eyes. What can you do about it? We didn't have enough knowledge to know what to do about it. Well, the human body deteriorates and disappears.
Is that possible that the bodies were kept in cryogenic suspension or something like that?
I don't think we were that far advanced to do that, because I knew what Walter Reed and some of these places were doing. I don't think that we were that far advanced to create some sort of liquid or something. And remember, we found that in almost everything we did, that there was one web that went through everything. It was electromagnetic. When we were in a position where we used electromagnetic to do something on that order, it killed the crew, the Philadelphia experiment. So you see, we didn't know enough really to use anything like this yet. And a good example is the Philadelphia experiment itself, which I just gave you a thing. Fortunately, people ask me if other people come forward to talk to you. There's one case where the man came forward because of the book to talk to me. Now we're friends. And he was there.
that liquid in which the body you saw was suspended was blue, isn't it? Or bluish.
The one I saw, I'm not sure whether it's blue. I turned the flashlight on it, and I'm not real sure that I know what it was, the color was. It looks a grayish, bluish type, but I can't say.
What liquid was it?
It was a liquid, but remember what it was. It was a liquid that we did to, in our world, to propagate or keep our bodies in existence, not the thing we got there. Of course, we didn't know any better, so we used that for this body, that other body. But we didn't shut out electromagnetism, is the trouble. Or it wasn't there at all, didn't put it in. Though that type of fluid was for human bodies. In fact, maybe we'd have been better off to use what the Egyptians used in their mummies, the way they did it. Because the liquid was our liquid that we invented in our time to preserve bodies of humans. It wasn't anything new that was invented on the spur of the moment. That was not possible anyway. Because things like that, it takes years of experiments.
So obviously the Americans were going, step by step, attempting to find solutions in those years, solutions that were not really feasible to the subject.
Well, I think the statement that you just made, you give us too much credit. Because in that statement you can say, even Corso worked step by step. Yes, I did. But how much did I really accomplish? You're giving us too much credit when you say that. We didn't really accomplish that much. And the main thing that I see now that we should have worked on, we didn't work on. Let me give you examples. I had von Neumann's file, Artificial Life. He was a genius. What did I do with it? Put it in my file. We discussed Einstein one day. I decided to go see Einstein. What did I do? I was at the White House. I could have called him. I did nothing. Wilbur Smith came to see me. The general told him, you and Colonel have a lot to talk about. He said, I'll send you some papers of my experiments and come out to Mayboro, his laboratory. When I finally got around 7 or 8 months later to call the man who was a genius, his secretary answered me, Mr. Smith died just a few weeks ago. Again, I missed out on things. You see, we were doing, well, on the other hand, people say, well, you accomplished something. Yeah, I accomplished some things. What about what I didn't accomplish? There's situations just like that happened. How much time did I have? How much did I know? You know, you've heard me announce always in the course of the speech, I'll always bring up. Now, don't get the idea, ladies and gentlemen, we knew what we were doing all the time, because we didn't. And I say that over and over, to let them know that these weren't geniuses working on these things. We were people, I was the man, and the people with me were just like them. We weren't geniuses way advanced our time. We had to plod little by little, step by step, to find out what was going on, what these things were.
But if Einstein was involved in research such as the alien stuff that you had in your hands, you believe that maybe those steps were a little more faster?
Mauricio, if I get to the point where I will publish the book I read, and this is the last thing I'll tell you now, the one I've written, I want to be a sequel to this book. At the end of every chapter, I have an explanation from Einstein, what that means in his terms. I showed it to a couple of scientists, friends of mine. What do you think? Do I explain it enough? He says, well, one thing I was interested to see, that I think you understand Einstein. I told him, I wish I did understand it all. And I fitted them in certain things on this subject that his theories fit in, his explanations. Once one of the top scientists I know, a good friend of mine, said only in one area you make a little mistake. The others are all right. Now I hope someday maybe they'll put that out. But if these people beat me in the law case, I might never put it out. and it explains, in Einstein's word, what these things we're talking about mean. I tried to do that. And it's quite lengthy. And some of the things that Einstein's there, at times I pull them out and read them over again. And I figure, do I really, this was one of the greatest brains that ever lived. Do I really think I understand this? Is this what he meant? And when you read it, you'll see what I mean. So I did do that. But I was remiss. Why didn't I go see him? And remember, I had the authority. I could send an airplane. I could have gone up there anytime I wanted. And what did I do? Nothing. And the biggest thing of all that I look back was this study I'm trying to do now to think back on the extraterrestrial. I did nothing except finance one laboratory on one thing. Why didn't we study it when we had the time, had the opportunity? We didn't. And now I think back how much more important that was in weapons. Yet what was our main drive? Weapons. And look how much more important that is. I think that the study of this extraterrestrial might be the future of mankind. Somebody has to do it eventually. But how much do we have now? Do we have one body? Can we get one? I don't know of any. Even the picture you showed me, just from the face and characteristics and the way the thing was acting, I have many reservations whether that really wasn't staged. Because I don't think the thing would act like that at all, the ones I knew. I think they're more serious looking than look like a clown or a face moving in all directions. You see, that's what, when you showed me that, I was sort of non-committal. I don't want to tell you it was, in my opinion, it's not, it won't act like that. But anyway, maybe it is. I hope we do have one like that. Well, I would like to see it. And some of the things they said there in the military wouldn't be logical. They said these men weren't trained. And you remember they said that? And I picked that up. As a commander, I would have never allowed non-trained men to even to walk in there. Untrained men will destroy something for you. So not intentionally, but because of the lack of knowledge. It would be better not to bring them in there because they might cause you damage. This way it lasts a little bit. And as a military commander, I had to think that way all the time. I don't put men on my missiles that had atomic warheads unless they were trained. I wouldn't dare make them go near that missile. It'd be too dangerous. Even when I commanded missiles, one day, 2 of my soldiers got drunk. And they went out and started playing with the missile, picking it up and down. And when I found out immediately, they were drunk. I court-martialed them both, and I gave orders, anybody that fools with the missiles, the guards will shoot to kill. Because the missiles were pointing, some of them were pointing at housing areas. What if and they had the knowledge to set one off. What if one of those would have gone in the housing area? With warheads in them. And with 30 kiloton warheads in some of them. What would have happened? And there was a situation of trained men who got drunk. Of course, they paid for it. I court-martialed them. And I had to give an order where even if a man gets drunk, he'll still think about it. If I play with that, somebody might shoot me. Even when you're drunk, you don't forget things like that. But you see, these are things that, when people show me this thing, I hold in reservation. And when I hear some of these speakers, I sit there and they're nice people, I'm not going to say anything. And if you remember right, I don't say anything about what they said. I go out and make friends with them, nice people. But I'm not going to try to destroy them. Why should I?
Okay, let's stop it here.
This is not a man who's lying. It's a man who's remembering what he was involved in. And I don't know if you understood the first part of the video, but Mauricio asked him about the mysterious deaths of researchers, and he got it wrong. What he was saying, he thought the mysterious deaths of people that had encounters with UFOs. So he was talking about he never heard anybody killed by a UFO. And all we know, if you know Travis and you've spoken to Travis Walton, When he had his encounter with the UFO, where it came down with a ray that killed him, because everybody thought he was dead. When he woke up, he said he had a crystal structure on his chest. He thinks they brought him back to life. And they left him on the road, but they shouldn't have left him on the road. And he was not naked when he was left on the road. He had clothes on. So the thing is that, again, we don't know what the agenda is, but you can tell from talking to, first of all, Colonel Corso couldn't answer that question because he didn't know if there were mysterious deaths of researchers. And second of all, his mentality is military. But, we're talking military-industrial complex here. This stuff went into the industrial. The industrial made money out of this. And I'm going to tell you the story now of my meeting with him, which was synchronistic. I met with him in that I saw him on the stage, and then I saw him coming out of his room, which was right next to mine. And I was shocked because I could get an interview, nobody else could. So I said, Colonel, tomorrow, can you come into my room? And I got a tape recorder, and I can mail this to my office in Rome right away. Would give me could you come in and do this? I get this exclusive. And he came to the door at 7. He had 2 books in his hand. One was dedicated to Ezio Rapinelli, with whom he had worked during World War II, and he told me to get it to him. He was in Italy. And so he sat down. By the way, you're going to see Ezio Rapinelli because I spent Easter at his house. I sat down with him, and he told me this story, and this is what I have to tell you. He didn't talk about... See, now I don't see this. This is the map of the White Sands area. Here's Socorro, where I investigated the 1945 crash. They say there's a crash at Corona and so forth. But Colonel Corso was the head of a missile battalion at the end of the Trinity site down here during 1957, and it's in his records that I'd given to Tom. And he told me that he was asked to shut his radars down during certain times of the day. And one time he was flying over the area that he was the head of, that area where he was assigned, and he saw a flying craft down there. He does talk about it later on. He didn't talk about it in that interview, but he told me when I first met him about this. He said he saw the craft. He went back to his base. He took a Jeep. He went out there to the site, and basically he saw the craft appear and disappear, so he didn't know if it was solid, so he threw cactus underneath it and squashed the cactus. So what is that telling us? And then he said, from the left-hand side came a being that looked like this, more or less looked like this, and said, I can't leave unless you shut your radars down. And Colonel Corso picked up his gun and pointed it at the being, because Colonel Corso also had a stiletto in his, he was Italian, he had a stiletto in his boot, and he had a Beretta, and he pointed at the being and he said, friend or foe? And the being, and he said to me in the hotel room, what do you think the being said? And I said, he said neither. And he said neither. So he said, the being said, would you like to come aboard? And he talked about it a little bit in that interview. And he said, I know what you people can do. He said, I know what you're capable of. I don't know if I want to come aboard. What do you have to offer? And the being telepathically said to him, a new world if you can take it. Now, this is what Whitley Striever has used, a new world if you can take it. This comes from Colonel Philip Corso. He wrote it on a napkin for me. Everybody in the field is using this. And I knew he had had contact with the being. Now, Corso says, if you read my book, he said he called up this particular officer and he said, shut the radars down, I'm going to let him go. And he let the being go. Remember, we're the ones with the gun. The being was just standing there like, saying, would you let me go? And he let the being go, and he said that the being shot off, and then he said that the officer that he had called, who had shut the radars down, said, come and see the radar. I've never seen anything go this fast ever. And he said the number of miles to being, how fast the craft went. And when he told me this in 1997, that's not the story I wanted. I couldn't do this. I said to myself, I'm not printing this. I didn't think he's crazy. I just want the back engineering stuff. This is a journalist, me, censoring a story because I didn't want his credibility to go down the tubes. So I didn't ever print it until after he was dead. Then I printed it, and we printed it. You can see we printed it in the magazine. This is the cover of Dawn of a New Age. It's going to come out in Rome. The colonel told me that this being had a silver band around its head. It had a stone in the middle, and it was an interface. And he also added, informally once, that in the Pentagon they had several of these silver bands. So he said to me that the being and the craft were one. And the problem we've had with crash saucers is we don't have the being to fly it. So it just sits there. Because the being and the craft are one means that it is made to fly in space. It puts its hands on two panels, and that panel and the interface it's wearing with thought, does the, this particular species has created this, okay? It's not all species. So here is Colonel Corso. He is assigned in 1957. His theory was that in 1945, because of the thunderstorms and the meteorological problem, there were two crashes, two UFOs crashed, and one appeared 10 years later. And that's the one he saw. That was what he was trying to tell me, that's the one he saw. Because this happened in 1957. So I looked up his records, and he was at that missile base in 1957. We printed his original notes, an extraterrestrial biological entity. And by the way, it was Colonel Corso that coined that term, because it's biological. It's a clone. He gave me the actual analysis of the clone. Here's a story he wrote, he wrote about the world and about our conflicts and about the ecological problem. I think that the colonel got some information from this being about our future. This is Colonel Corso saying, creators look like us. I have not made a penny from my book, and I will not put any more information in the hands of greedy people. I will only talk to the people like you. My skeptics and debunkers, my answer is, I will not let them pass their stupidity on me. On the Thursday before he died, it was the Thursday, before he died, he talked to me. He was so angry at the UFO community, he called them vultures. He said, I'm sorry I ever wrote the book. He said, they don't have the clearances. They didn't have my experience. He said, and I'm really upset with them. And I said to him, Colonel, I hope you don't include me in that. He's like, I've been your friend all these years. And he was very, very upset about the reaction to him and his disclosure, which made me understand why the secret was secret. Here's part of his curriculum, or what you call his biography. I have it. This is Korean War, World War II, American campaign medal. He became chief of Pentagon Foreign Technology under General Trudeau. He left the military in 1963, became an aide to Strom Thurmond. I don't think Strom Thurmond, who wrote the preface originally, knew it was going to be about UFOs, because he pulled out of it right away. So he was assigned to the Warren Commission because he was in the Kennedy administration. And when I was with him at Easter, he told me he was good friends with Jean Dixon and helped her with most of her books. And if you remember, Jean Dixon was a psychic who predicted the death of Kennedy. I said, you did? You knew her? He goes, yeah, I think he was passing intelligence information to her, because he said he walked into Robert Kennedy's office and said, watch out for your brother. So this is a man that really had intelligence briefings, knew what was going on. I told you, he wrote a book the day after Dallas. I don't think it's going to come out. Here are the people that he was with. Trudeau's second from the right. And when they leave the military, by the way, he claims the IBM, Bell Labs, Dow, Hughes have developed technology, so he named them. He went to work for Sperry Rand as he and Trudeau went to work for Sperry Randis Consultants. A lot of people did. These are articles that he gave me about himself. When he was the head of intelligence in Rome, Corso during that time dealt with Pope Paul IV 2 or 3 months at a time, and he was very angry at the Pope because the Pope was letting the Nazis go into, the Vatican was letting them escape into Argentina. And he went to tell, he says, you better stop doing that because everybody plays two sides against the middle here. And he said, you know, we know that you're letting these Nazis escape, and of course they went to South America and so forth. And yeah, they could have, yeah, but that's what his job was, to go and talk to the Pope about this. And he also said that the priests were acting as spies. So he said to you know, be careful. And he talked about this. These are articles written about Corso. He received the War Cross for bravery. He said his category of military injustice was not spooky cloak and dagger. His was counterintelligence, counter-espionage, anti-subversion, and what is now Allied law and order. And he had an excellent mind. He used logic all the time. This is the Italian cross he did get. Because I was at his house. I went to visit him, and there's, let's see, these are all the people that he posed with. I'm trying to see if Trudeau's there. No, these are other colonels, and this is all in Italian. The Italian television did a special on him, so we were in Italy filming, and then my boss is there, Maurizio. This is him right here, the guy with the glasses. This is Zarai TV. And here he is, and there's the tie that I have that he gave me. And he was happy to have people, intelligent people, ask him intelligent questions and take him seriously. So that's what he wrote to me, you know, the new world, if you can take it. Somehow he wanted to shove me into this new world, which changed my mind about everything. A new world will dawn for you and you will be in the forefront, he wrote to me. So do I have an obligation 20 years later to do something? Yeah, I kind of do. There I am with him. This is what you saw at the beginning when he gave Adriano the propulsion system. A drawing he did, and by the way, it is in the mainstream because Bill Burns printed that same drawing in UFO magazine. So that drawing of Colonel Corso's was in UFO magazine. He gave me the body, and I said, what am I going to do with the body? 18 pages of body. He said, you'll learn. This is what he gave me. And basically, the being that he saw at Walter Reed, and he also talked about Walter Reed Hospital, Mammoth was another place he went to, all Army places. What he saw was, and he couldn't give you the actual autopsy, but he did talk about it because he was very fascinated. He said that was the greatest gift they gave us. And this is the chart. It's in my book. 4-lobe brain. It had 2 implants. The being. 1 lung, different lymphatic system, 5 toes, no ears, no nose, no mouth, 4 fingers, a stomach, 1 lung, blood and heart, clone made to fly in space. And this is what he said. He said at the bottom here, when we were given the great gift of the EB, which is the extraterrestrial biological entity, we were given the key to the heavens. If we could duplicate it or change man, it would open up the universe. The future would be unlimited. In other words, he believed we couldn't fly in space, that we need to create clones to fly in space like they did. He said to me, I don't believe that's the actual alien. He said, I think they're like us. He said, and we're really terrified about who created those guys because they could be walking the halls of the Pentagon. And we wouldn't recognize them. So they were afraid. Here I am. I've got pictures here of Adriano, who he gave the propulsion system to. This is Adriano with Michael Wolff-Couvant. I did that story. I can't talk about it yet. Some year I might. Here's Adriano with Dr. John Mack and me. Here's Adriano with Colonel Corso. Here's Adriano, me, and Monsignor Balducci. So Adriano is right there. He is the other person that Colonel Corso wanted to go ahead and tell the world the truth. It was me and Adriana considered us. By the way, I was 53 at the time, so I don't think I was that young. But evidently he said, you young people, go ahead and do that. This is the propulsion system that he drew. Very interesting. He has a plasma electromagnetic field. This was in UFO magazine, so it's in the general. This is a portrait I took of him at Easter. This is us at the pizzeria in Rome. He was very happy because basically he, wanted, I was like his bodyguard. I was with him all the time. And at that time when I was teaching Ursula Andress's son, Dimitri. And he said to me, Dimitri said, I'm interested in UFOs. Can my mother and I meet Colonel Corso? And she ended up talking to him for hours, and he was very happy. So of course, he doesn't look happy, but anyway, she was very interested in this. Okay, so we brought him to Italy for 2 conferences. The first one was Pescara. It had Carlos Diaz, Wendell Stevens. It had Bill Hamilton. It had several big top researchers. The second one was 1998 because the Independent. This is Desmond Leslie with him because Desmond Leslie was there also. For you people that do know UFO history, Desmond Leslie was the man that wrote the books on George Adamski, The Flying Saucers Have Landed. He was an RAF pilot. He knew George Adamski. I was listening to their conversations the whole time. I was fascinated. And Corso and Desmond were very, very close together. They would, be whispering things, and they had to agree to write a book together, which was very, very interesting. And Desmond is no longer with us either. And here, when we went to the first conference, here's the gang. This is Carlos Diaz, and you'll see some of his pictures. This is Michael Heseman. This is Desmond Leslie. Robert Dean is not there, but there's Cecilia Dean. So he was there. This is Bill Hamilton, and this was the first conference we brought him to. There he is with us, the press conference. He's speaking to Wendell Stevens. There he is speaking to Robert Dean. And if you spoke to Robert Dean, by the way, Robert Dean is one of the greatest people ever in ufology. And we brought him over to Italy several times. Very understanding. Here he is looking at Carlos Diaz's his photographs explaining that the propulsion system does have that much light. He verified Carlos's pictures. Now, San Marino. San Marino was an attempt like Sir Eric Gary in 1979. Sir Eric Gary of Grenada tried to bring the UFO question to the United Nations. And he had Alan Hynek and Gordon Cooper there and Lee Spiegel. And Lee Spiegel's done many presentations on this because we've tried to open this up seriously to the United Nations. And of course, while Eric Gary while he was gone, there was a coup and it never got to the United Nations. However, we tried in Italy with the Independent Republic of San Marino. It's like Monaco. It has nothing to lose. It can make a resolution and nothing's going to happen to it. It's a very, very, very small republic. So we got international people together. This is Boris Shurinoff from Russia, Roberto Pinotti from Italy, and they signed a resolution. And Colonel Corso signed it too. And I was on the stage with him, as you can see, and we're talking about this. This was a movie that was taken by the wife of Bud Hopkins, Carol Rainey, and she gave me permission to put these clips, not clips, but photos from the movie because she took a movie of us. This is Easter, and remember I told you that Rapanelli was the man that he wanted that second book to go to. That's him. These two were buddies during World War II. And when he told me about Gene Dixon and he told me a lot of other things, he told me about, at Easter, when I got to spend Easter with him in 1998, he told me that when he was a little boy, that he was playing with marbles on a road, and that his doctor came and hit him with the town car. He called it a town car, and Corso appeared and disappeared. And the doctor was freaked out, so he took the little boy to his Sicilian grandmother, told him he didn't have a scratch on him, he didn't understand. Corso, from his contact at White Sands, and from the fact that in 1947, when he was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas, and he saw an alien body in the veterinary quarters there, and that's what he's famous for. I mean, he talks about that all the time. And he said that when he saw the alien body, they said the cargo came from Roswell. Corso is a very unusual person. He was groomed to do this from when he was a little boy, that he was very unusual. And then I don't know if you heard him say that he had a photographic mind. He could remember a document before in the video. He said, I had the kind of photographic mind, I could remember documents. He also thought that he told me that he believed in, that he had lived in Italy before. So, you know, if you read The Life of General Patton, he believed he had, in reincarnation, that he was going back to a battle he had had. Corso was very much the same. And he also thought that his role was, at 82 years old, was to tell the truth to the world. That he was being groomed for this. Here is the group at San Marino who signed the paper. Very young Colin Andrews. This is Messen. August Messen was from Belgium. Gilles Bourdet, Java Jacobs, Bud Hopkins, and they all met him. Now, did they all treat him very well? One of those researchers, I'm not going to say who it is, went up to Corso, and I was with Corso, and said, you have ruined ufology for all of us. And Corso looked at me and said, who is this guy? Did he have the clearances I had? He said, did he work in the Pentagon? I said, don't pay any attention to him. Your books, they think your book sold a lot of them, you know, and they're second rate. It's a competitive thing. It's awful. I can't even go into it, but I'm not going to tell you who it was, but I was in shock. I mean, you don't go up to the colonel and say, you've ruined ufology for all of us. Like what? So Corso, that's one of the reasons he wrote, don't pass your stupidity on me. I don't want to talk to these people anymore. Here he is. Here's Yvonne Smith. Here's Colonel Corso. This is Colin Andrews, Michael Hesman. And these are the people that signed the San Marino. And did it go through? No, because they changed political parties, so that resolution never got to the United Nations. Is it ever going to happen? Are we going to have disclosure? Are we ever going to go to the United Nations? Are we ever going to have people brave enough to sign a paper? I don't know. But here we are in San Marino. This is Michael Lindemann. I don't know if you remember him of CNI News. Yeah, there he is right there. He was present too. He interviewed Corso. And here we all are anyway. This is, he said, the main theme of this dissertation is the United States Army research and development during the golden years, 59 to 63. The projects that were born were conceived during that period. We're only talking Army now, because I'm sure the Air Force has some stuff. They just don't have anybody talking about it. So we know that this happened. Now, in the last part of my book, it's the most interesting part of all. Corso is on the Tonight Show in Italy. It's called the Maurizio Costanzo Show. He's on the Tonight Show of Italy, and he has an interpreter there. That you're seeing her, she's right there. And Maurizio Costanzo goes over to him and says, was there more than one crash? And he said, yes. And Maurizio Costanzo, who is like the Johnny Carson, says, don't say anything else. This is on public television. In other words, because he was in shock because he believed Corso, and he also didn't want him to talk too much. Talking too much has a phrase that Stephen Greer uses. It's called going off the reservation. Do I believe that Corso went off the reservation? Yes. I think he went overboard on what he was allowed to say, and it caused certain problems for him. Now, he talked about this in the tape, so I had to put it, that Bert Rutan came to see him Burt Rutan came to see him. You know, I don't know if you know, Burt Rutan and Branson are doing Virgin Galactic. They have a spaceport down in Roswell. And he said, Burt Rutan was wondering why the flying saucers they had captured didn't fly. And Colonel Corso said, because you don't have the being that flies them. In other words, he's like a machine. He's got to be in there or it's not going to fly. And so that's what he told him. And I don't know if you saw the miniseries that Spielberg did once. I'm trying to think of we were talking about Taken, where the government had captured a saucer and used psychics. They put 4 psychics there to try to get it to fly because it was fly. They knew that it was the brain waves that caused the craft to fly because it was live. The craft was a biological craft, and it flew that way. So he said he had that conversation with Burt Rutan because Burt Rutan makes composite airplanes, and Burt Rutan and Elon Musk are very interested in UFOs. Elon Musk, SpaceX. I'm even convinced, I've seen Elon Musk cry on television when they were asking him about something. It's possible they have been contacted. This is just a supposition, I'm saying. Because these guys are private industry, they're not NASA, that are trying to go into outer space. Now, Virgin Galactic is selling tickets. Ashton Kutcher just bought a ticket for $250,000. Is this going to happen in our, well, maybe not in my lifetime, but in your grandchildren's lifetime, yes. Commercial flights. And by the way, if they see a UFO, are you going to shut them up? How are you going to shut up Ashton Kutcher? You know, those guys that are flying out there. They're going to come down and say, we saw a couple of UFOs, it's real. You know, I think that's how it's going to happen. There's a propulsion again. The greatest gift is the extraterrestrial biological entity. They are one, and they are necessary to fly the ship. Okay, that is the cover, the new cover of Dawn of a New Age. I was very sad when the colonel passed, but I have to tell you this weirdo story. He was very unusual. He told me that he would go into a trance and could see other dimensions and so forth, and I saw that happen at Easter. And he had one heart attack, and I knew he was ill, and he talked to me from the hospital. He says, you know, Paula, he said, I said goodbye to my family because I had a heart attack and I thought I was going to die. He said, but I had this dream that I was aboard a craft and there was an alien doctor and he shoved a new heart in my chest. He said, and then there was these screens. He said, and I saw the future. And he said, I don't think I'm going to tell humanity what I saw. They don't deserve it. And he said, and I don't think it was a good future. But anyway, he said that the nurses at the hospital called up the family and said, come and take him. He's perfectly well. He's walking up and down the halls. And we don't know what happened. He's well. And this story, do I believe a man that tells me he had a dream that he was aboard a craft and the alien doctor shoved it and went into it? He said he went over to a drawer, picked up a heart and shoved it in his chest. I have to tell you that because that's what he told me. Then he goes home for 2 weeks and then comes the second one, where he talked to me very, very angry on Thursday with the whole community. He was angry at everybody. I'm sorry I ever wrote the book and so forth. That's really sad because this man was very, very courageous. And then he's died and buried, I think it's a military cemetery, but there I am with his daughter-in-law, and we're placing a rose from Italy. So his family invited me down, and his little apartment was near the pool, and this is the pool house. And they gave me his books, they gave me the briefcase, they gave me his luggage, they gave me things because they knew that I had done a pretty good job doing the story. And they let me stay in his little apartment, so I was freaked out the whole time. I slept in that bed thinking, oh, please, I don't want to see ghosts. You know, it's like, I'm here, this is very nice, I'm here with the family and so forth, but, I think he's wherever he is, he's very well aware of all this. And anyway, there are messages that come, whether it be the doctor that shoves your heart back in your chest or whatever. Know that that's an Italian, that there was a sighting over St. Petersburg, Florida, and I don't think these are Christian UFOs. And it was that, this photo comes out of Mexico City. This was a photo of UFOs in the sign of a cross. I don't know what the year is that this happened. The truth about UFOs and the release of the hidden technologies to replace fossil fuels, the conservation of energy to prevent global warming, the moment that people speak up, they will realize it's all connected. Whether it be Hynek, whether it be Edgar Mitchell, who's the these are the heroes. These are the real heroes. Edgar Mitchell, Dr. Hynek, Stephen Greer, Al Gore talks about the inconvenient truth, and the former defense minister who is now 93 years old. He's still with us. Let's release these technologies because they are the ones. I mean, that is the secret. I mean, the reason is if they come and say, well, guess what? We got all these hidden technologies now for the last 70 years. They will replace our current structure economically, and that we're still putting pipelines down. So that is going to be, that is why the secret is secret. This is Robert Salas. Beware, these are the messages that we're getting from outer space. Beware of our nuclear capacity to destroy each other. Here's Edgar Mitchell. I was one of the only people invited to his funeral in Miami, Florida. I cannot believe the courage of this man, sixth man to walk on the moon, to say, open up the Roswell files. I was there at the Washington Press Club when he said that. And there I am, where he told me that he didn't think the Earth was ready for disclosure because we weren't one. So the bottom line here is the message that the being gave him is, if we change, if humanity changes, it's a new world, if you can take it. And that is, there's so many messages here, but I thank you for your attention, and I hope that you realize that we owe a strong thank you to the whistleblowers, all of them. Okay, so thank you for your attention. We've got to cut it off, and thank you for everything.